We'll call our meeting into order.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'll call the roll. Gina Avent,
Here.
John Glasgow, Ralph Carson,
Here.
Philip Jefferson,
Here.
Jehan Hodges,
Here.
Sherry Phillips,
Here.
and Michael Voiland. That's 5 members present.
You. Mr. Carson, would you be willing to do our invocation this afternoon?
I will, thank you. Our Heavenly Father, we come before you this evening to give thanks for all you have done and ask that you guide us and give us wisdom in the deliberations before us this evening. We ask that you bless those that may be in need this evening and comfort them as only you can do. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
We are now at the time of the adoption of our agenda. Are there any items that need to be adjusted on our agenda before we move forward? That being said, do we have a motion to approve and adopt our agenda as written?
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion on the floor to adopt the agenda. I will call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
John Blasco, Ralph Carson,
Aye.
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jehan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips.
Aye.
Have 5 ayes. That's unanimous.
Adoption of our agenda has been approved. Our meeting minutes from our meeting from March 11th is in front of you. If you've had a chance to review those, wonderful. If you have not, if you needed a few moments, I'm happy to allow a few moments for you to do it. Any items? If there are no adjustments or changes, do we have a motion to approve our meeting minutes from March 11th?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from our March 11th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to adopt the presented minutes. I will call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
Aye.
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jehan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips.
Aye.
The motion to adopt the minutes carries 5-0.
Approved our meeting minutes from March 11th. Thank you so much. So we will go ahead and start our first presentation from Ms. Lawler from Campo. Looking forward to hearing from you about our Southeast area study. It's good to see you.
Thank you. It's good to see you all. Again, it kind of feels like I'm back home, a little bit like deja vu.
We like that.
Good to see you all again. So thank you all for having me here this evening. As Mr. Jefferson mentioned, my name is Gabby Lawler. I'm here from the Capital Area MPO, and I'm here to provide a final briefing on the Southeast Area Study update. As the study is coming to a close and we are undertaking endorsement efforts. So just a quick overview of what we will be discussing tonight. I'll provide a quick project refresher and update for any that might not be familiar with the study. I will walk you through what all is included in that final report, and then a quick overview of how the projects were prioritized through the study, and then finally I will cover endorsement efforts. So the Southeast Area Study, or SEAS for short, is an update to the original study that was completed in 2017. And in a nutshell, it is a study that is just establishing a unified vision for the integration of land use and transportation to accommodate existing and future travel needs. So the guiding principles of the study: during the first phase of engagement, we asked the public about their vision for the Southeast area, and then from that feedback, the 2017 guiding principles were updated to be inclusive of feedback from the public and the stakeholder and the technical committees that helped to guide the study process. And so these guiding principles just help to guide the development of the study and recommendations that are coming out of it. So a quick overview of the project schedule. This study initiated in March, April of 2022. And as you can see at this point, we're undergoing presentations and adoption efforts with all of the CEASE communities. So I'll do a quick walkthrough of what all is going to be, or what all is included in the final report. So we have the first chapter, which is the introduction, and it just provides the context for the study and explains the fact that this is an update to the original study that was completed in 2017, and an overview of the communities and the project partners that were involved in the study. And so that included the capital area MPO or CAMPO, the UCP, RPO, and DOT, as well as all the towns included in the study area. Sorry about that. So for the planning framework, that just goes over the process through the study, the outreach that was involved. There were 2 major engagement phases, and these are detailed more thoroughly in the appendices to the report. And then it walks through the guiding technical and stakeholder advisory groups and the activities that was undergone through the development of the study. So the regional snapshot provides an overview of existing conditions and what we project future conditions will be going forward in terms of development, land use, and needs from the transportation network to support that growth in land use. In the land use and scenario planning chapter, we go through land use and growth strategies. So there's a number of what-if scenarios where we take a look at how development and redevelopment may occur, and also taking a look at how we want to be a little bit more intentional about how that growth does occur, and taking a look at policies and land use that has to be in place for that. So taking a look at multimodal recommendations, there are roadway, bicycle and pedestrian, and transit recommendations that come out of the study, and I will go more into that here in a few seconds. For the action plan, this gets into the logistics of how do we implement the recommendations that are coming out of the study, both for land use and for transportation recommendations. And again, I'll be walking through the transportation recommendations a little bit more here in a few slides. So project prioritization. The project prioritization took a series of inputs to identify the project priorities, and then they get sorted into general time horizons, those being near-term, mid-term, and long-term projects. Near-term are 5 to 10 years, mid-term is 10 to 15, and then long-term is further out beyond that. And so for the bicycle and pedestrian mode, near-term projects were mostly those that were recommended to fill in gaps in the network, particularly within the towns. Mid-term recommendations looked at those that connect towns and recreational resources, and then long-term was more so those that would complete the regional multimodal system. Looking at the transit recommendations, these were prioritized generally by transit propensity and demand. So near-term recommendations were focused on areas that are transit supportive, either in the immediate or in the near future. And a lot of this involved microtransit, which could help to build that ridership base to eventually support more advanced forms of transit. And then mid to long-term recommendations were for areas that maybe do not have the market yet to support transit, but we project that further into the future they will. So looking at the roadway recommendations, these were prioritized generally by whether they are needed in the immediate term or looking further out. And so they were based on congestion improvement and travel time savings. Near term being those, again, that are needed immediately to relieve congestion, and then ranging all the way to long term for those that aren't as urgent, but we are projecting will be needed as growth continues to occur in the region. And then the intersection recommendations were essentially prioritized in a similar fashion as the roadway recommendations. So looking to endorsement, as I mentioned, the report and all the documentation have been finalized at this point, and so currently we are working towards endorsement by all the ceased jurisdictions. We've been going around and presenting to boards, and we've checked in with the technical committee that was involved with the study. So for Garner, that was Jeff and some of the folks in the engineering department. And so it's just a pulse check of, are all the recommendations that are coming out of this in line with what the towns want to see? And then barring any issues there, asking for the recommendation of endorsement of the recommendations coming out of the study. And once we've secured all of that, this will go to Campo's executive board and ask them for endorsement. And so ultimately, all of these recommendations will feed up into the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan at the region level that Campo is actually currently working on. They've kicked off that process. So with that, I know I walked through that a little bit quickly, so if you all have any questions, I'm happy to take those now. Yep. Otherwise, thank you for having me.
So much for sharing that with us. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I've got a question for Mr. Triesenberg, since his name was brought up in this. Is there anything in the C's report that Garner was looking for and did not get? Or anything on a wish list, or does this kind of envision everything that town has presented?
Yeah, I'll let Gabby correct me if I'm wrong, but basically this is kind of the big wish list for the town, and making sure that then feeds up into the MTP. So it's we basically look at the whole universe of possible projects. There were a few things hanging out from the last time we did the Southeast area study that did not get carried up correctly. So we have addressed those items. And so, yeah, as far as we know at this point in time, it reflects accurately what we have in our plans and some of the things that have come to our attention in the last few years as far as some tweaks, but nothing major. Probably the biggest thing I would say was the plan for Timber Drive East. At one time, the plan was thought that it would fly over to South Greenfield Parkway over the interstate, but we had some analysis and study done on it last time, 3 or 4 years ago, that showed that that was not going to actually be feasible. The current location of South Greenfield Parkway, and I think it's Waterfield Drive, is too close to the interstate, and all of those parcels now have been built up or in the process of being built up, and that intersection would have had to slide like 1,000 some feet or more to the east. So physically moving that intersection was just not going to be possible, and the modeling really wasn't showing as much of a benefit as maybe was thought years and years ago. So the recommendation coming out of that plan was to carry Timber Drive east south to reconnect again with White Oak near I-40 and the existing flyover, with the long range vision of that being an interchange with I-40 at some point. That has been in the plans for, I think, probably ever since 40 was built. It was not deemed, I think, to be critical at the time that they first built I-40, but it is in the plans, and there is room to accommodate it that DOT is trying to protect. So,
Any improvements on Garner Road heading towards Clayton? I know we had talked about some trails and greenways and doing some road improvements along there. Is that part of this area study at all, or?
Yes, it is. So I will point out that the recommendations coming out of the study, we're not recreating the wheel, so we take a look at what is on local comprehensive transportation plans, and then so whatever is in Garner's transportation plan is something that we built off of, and then through the modeling and the scenario work in the study, we take a look at, have conditions changed? Are these recommendations still warranted? So those recommendations are being carried forward of improvements for the roadway along Garner Road, as well as, trail improvements and active transportation accommodations.
and I believe that this process will continue to rotate. The way Campo has set this up, there's kind of quadrants of the whole Campo area. So every 4 years, there's hopefully should be an update happening. So if we are working towards budgeting some dollars to rewrite and redo our transportation plan, because we're still in that period where we're using some of what's in the 2010 plan that wasn't updated in the 2017 plan. And we want to get everything together in one document. So anything that happens with that over the next couple of years, any additional progress we make, I think our Parks and Rec department is looking at an update to their Parks and Greenways plan. So anything that will come out of those projects in the next couple of years, we'll look forward to wrapping those up into the next update of the Southeast Area Study. So that's kind of the progression of our plans feeding Southeast Area Study, which then will feed up into the whole metro transportation plan.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question of what we consider micro-transit in our zone. How does Campo define what they consider micro-transit to be? If that is something maybe.
Sure. So that's, something that has been trending more in the transit realm now. And I mean, microtransit at a very basic level is, taking a look at, you're able to have smaller fleets and support shared rides, and there's different models for how it can work. There's, you can look at the example in Morrisville where they have node-to-node service, so they have several nodes for high activity centers in the town, and in-town residents are able to access that service to get shuttled basically between the nodes. There's also an example in Wilson, North Carolina, where they have had fixed route bus service for several decades, but they found that the price of running it was not panning out at the end of the day for the ridership that they had, and they did a study and realized that microtransit was actually more effective. They were able to address that demand through microtransit. So it's just being able to have that shared service, which is similar to what you have on, bus service and transit, but at a smaller scale. So oftentimes it's very useful for when the density isn't quite there to be able to support higher frequency or heavier transit. and it helps to build up that transit ridership. And so, it's kind of like the next step above Uber or other shared rides like that. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah, it kind of does. I was trying to kind of really put into a reference what we would, align the different versions. So circulator, connector, microtrain. When does that begin to shift into something that we would consider rail? I guess,
Right.
which is the mid to long term, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it's more of a longer term, just because of how how expensive that investment is and all the infrastructure requirements with it. But for example, when I was still here at Garner, I know that with microtransit, with the nature of Garner's geography, you have the center and the southern portions that are not quite as built up yet, but there might still be a desire for residents to have access to transit. And so something like microtransit, where it's too difficult to serve that large of an area with a fixed route bus, for example, it might be more feasible to use something like microtransit, where those folks that do want to get around via transit, or maybe have to get around via transit because they don't have access to a vehicle, they could utilize a service like that and still be able to reach key destinations. And it is just more financially feasible than having a fixed route bus service, which winds up being more expensive with having to cover, fleet services and everything that comes along with that.
I'm definitely excited to, see this in a more formal direction, and to try to think about how our public transit really helps to benefit our town, especially with as much development that's being planned. And I know our residents are extremely concerned with traffic and automobile traffic and movement and circulation. And so I think that it's helpful for our residents to hear that, there is work being done, not that we make decisions that have no other forthcoming process, but thinking about the short term, the midterm, near term, midterm, and long term approach may also help us to think about the development that we review in a way. Thing for us that you may have.
No, I'm working with Jeff and planning staff to get this scheduled to take the presentation to town council as well. And depending on which session we wind up targeting, if it's a work session, then it would probably just be the presentation and then a follow-up consent item. But just to let you all know that that'll be coming to town council as well.
This is wonderful.
So if you do read through and have any comments, you can just feel free to send them to me, and I can forward anything on to Gabby. But at this point, we just wanted to bring you all up to speed as to what is going on, and particularly looking forward as we prepare to do our next town plan update for transportation.
Great. I know that that is something that probably everyone is ready to see in some capacity. I think we are. Oh, maybe I'll speak for myself. Okay. Well, so there is not anything that we have to vote on, but thank you all for your comments, and please do share any comments that you may have with Mr. Triesenberg if you think of any. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. Likewise, it's good to see you all again. And like Jeff mentioned, don't be a stranger. My contact information is up there. Feel free to let me know if you have any comments or any feedback on the study, or just otherwise, you know where to find me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much.
We are now at the time of our old and new business. CZ 24001, 312 Highway 70 East, the villas at White Oak.
Good evening, commissioners and public. We'll be presenting the rezoning case this evening. Just pull up the presentation. This is my first presentation since joining the town of Gardner, so it's a pleasure to be before you this evening. My name is Erin Joseph, and I will be presenting the CZ 24-001. The request is a rezoning. It's a Tier 1 conditional district rezoning. The applicant is Tracy Dusenberry Tate of Halcon Companies LLC. She has submitted the application on behalf of the property owner, A&H Hospitality. The request includes a rezoning of 5.04 acres. The current uses, zoning districts are currently commercial mixed use and light industrial. And the applicant would like to rezone the property to commercial mixed use conditional. The site is located at 312 US Highway 70. Have the site here, and so it is bound by commercial mixed use on the east and west boundaries. There, it's a dual zoning district, so you have commercial that fronts the property and then light industrial to the rear. You also have the adjoining property that is zoned as light industrial, and then you do have going east commercial mixed use conditional. Some of the uses that are in the commercial mixed use, and it's intended to accommodate general commercial, retail, and service. The light industrial is intended for low-intensity industrial uses. It is geared towards automobile, transit, and pedestrian access. This district is designed to serve and pull from the surrounding community and even adjacent communities. The last traffic count for the site on US 70, in 2021, it was 32,500 average annual daily trips, and it is estimated to be 34,000 today. So we utilize our newly adopted comprehensive plan and the framework for this particular site. It situates it between two activity centers. So you have to the northwest of the site, the mixed-use activity center, and then southeast you do have the community activity center. The Regional Employment Activity Center to the southeast. However, because the site is situated at the edge of the Community Activity Center, you do have the railroad and US 70 that bisects this site from the focal point of the mixed-use activity center, so it lends itself more towards the southeast, towards the Regional Employment Activity Center. Again, this request is a Tier 1 request. It does not include a master plan. They have narrowed the listed possible uses down out of 60 to 6, and they have offered 5 conditions outside of the permitted uses. Those 5 proffered conditions include housing designed for the senior community, a minimum of 4 stories for multifamily buildings, a pedestrian connection or sidewalk to the WakeMed property towards the east, a minimum of 1,800 square feet of interior recreational or social space, and a minimum of 4,000 square feet of exterior or recreational social space. The applicant conducted a neighborhood meeting on February 15th, and there were a total of 10 attendees at that meeting. And you do have the full meeting report in your staff report. So there were a few observations that staff made in reviewing this case. Well, you have the layering of the community activity center on top of the retail activity center, and being near the regional employment activity center. There is some support for greater massing and intensity on the site, but however, without a master plan commitment, it is difficult to evaluate some metrics from the comprehensive land use plan, but they are implied due to the unique shape of the site. And for example, a build to, or a setback versus a build to line for the building, just because you do have 2 parcels directly in front of the site. So the request was evaluated against the framework for consistency, and we evaluated 7 growth framework criteria. 3 were strongly consistent, 1 was modestly consistent, there were 2 split, and there was 1 modestly inconsistent. And we, staff graded the modestly inconsistent due to the absence of a separate infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, but we did not give it the strongest rating against inconsistency because those are existing conditions to the site. Of land use and community character, 8 criteria were determined to be applicable or possibly meaningful, and so 4 were modestly consistent, 3 were split, and 1 was modestly inconsistent, and we did give a extra credit or bonus for expanding infill development without straining infrastructure. And this request could be seen as modest with a modest inconsistency because the proposal could be seen as a shift toward reclassifying an activity center to residential, since it will likely not be a mixed-use development. However, any residential development would be subservient to the non-residential uses in the area generally. And scoring was also limited because of the Tier 1 nature of the request and the limitation of the proffered conditions, besides a restricted list of uses. In the overall review of this request, in the absence of any strong non-supporting criteria and a modest level of consistency with the plan's growth framework, staff supports an overall finding of consistency at this time. You do have the full consistency report attached to your staff report. So staff has drafted a consistency statement that the commission may use And I can read it off. We, the Planning Commission, find that in the absence of any strong, non-supporting comprehensive plan criteria and a modest level of consistency with the plan's growth framework, this request to rezone approximately 5.04 acres from commercial mixed-use and light industrial to commercial mixed-use conditional is consistent with the town's adopted land use plans. And on the screen, you have excuse me, highlighted options that indicates the results of staff's analysis, and so consistent and recommend approval. However, there are 3 other choices that, as you consider this case, you may find appropriate. Also have drafted a motion, a draft motion to recommend approval, and is also within your staff report. So the next steps would be to deliberate the merits of this case this evening and to determine a finding of plan consistency and recommendation to approve or deny. The case would then go back to town council for findings of reasonableness and a decision to approve or deny the rezoning. The applicant is here this evening and would like to present to you all as well and answer any questions, and I am also available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Patient.
Sir.
Before we move on to the applicant, are there any questions for staff, or would you like to hear from the applicant first before we go into? See that we have a public sign-in here, so if you would, please state your name and your address and share your information with us.
Hi, I'm Tracy Dusenberry Tate with Halcon Companies and Halcon Development. My address is 2615 Anderson Highway, Suite B, Powhatan, Virginia, 23139. I am glad to be with you tonight. Let's see if I can operate this.
I have to turn it on the side.
There we go, that's better. So I'm here representing the development team tonight, and we have put together a great development team. We have a long history of successful affordable housing development. We have a proven track record all across the state of North Carolina. Halcon even won an award from the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency in 2018 for outstanding achievement in affordable housing. And we pride ourselves on excellent relationships with city, county, and state staff and representatives. Halcon has had 20 years development experience in North Carolina, and I'm proud to say I'm a Trojan. I graduated from Garner Senior High, when that's what it was called. And so Halcon and Central actually both are have relationships to Garner. Central's Edith Pittman was here for over 40 years and was also involved in Old School Commons. So we're really glad to be back here in Garner again. Trinity, our other partner, also has experience working in like 9 other states, but altogether we've built or developed approximately 8,000 units. These are some examples of other senior communities we have done across the state. And this is, I know we don't have to show a site plan for a Tier 1, but this is actually our site plan that we're proposing. We did take this to the community meeting, and we received input from the residents, and we were glad to do that. So on the next slide, we took into account some of the recommendations they had, which were including a dog park, adding a sidewalk to the hospital property, and a deceleration turn lane into the property just because you're coming off of, Highway 70. So That would make it safer for the seniors. And this is a list of the amenities we have or plan to have at the community. So it will be one building with 64 units, all for seniors, targeted to 55 and older. This is just a development description. One of the things that the Board of Aldermen were really excited about was our level of affordability. So I think they were looking forward to that, since everything's below 60% AMI. This is the location again, and I know Aaron already showed you that, behind the car wash, and it's a really unique site. I mean, there's not really a lot you can do there with the topo. Previously, it was a zone for a hotel, and this is a picture of what was approved. And because of the pandemic, they had to pivot, and so they thought this was a good pivot, and we thought it was a good pivot to put affordable housing there in a building that's kind of similar to what they were proposing. And also with the CMX LI zoning, CMX does already allow for apartments, but then the LI didn't, so we needed to have it rezoned to CMX conditional. We thought it was great with the hospital right beside of it. And I know that eventually that's going to move, but it's still going to be medical offices, so it'll still be, really convenient for the seniors to get to doctor's appointments. And also, it's really close to a lot of different amenities, especially the Garner Senior Center, which we've always been really proud of. They have a lot of activities, and so it would be great having it, less than a mile from the property. And we thought it would be really convenient for family members to swing by on their way home from work and visit their loved one, or pick them up and take them out to eat, or to a doctor's appointment. And then this is a list of the conditions we proposed. The first one, like I said, we're targeting 55 and older, but the only reason we had that provision in there for the other 20% is just for fair housing law, in case there's someone with special needs or mobility impairment. But we are going to limit that to 45 and older. But we did want to have that in there. And we also added the pedestrian connection or sidewalk, and that it would be 4 stories, because that was something that seemed to be important. And also the amount of interior recreation space we're going to have for the residents, 1,800 minimum, and outdoor 4,000 square feet. And then we, pared down the list of uses from 60 to the 6 that are included here. So that's all I have, and we really would appreciate your support. I have Brent Purdom from Bowman Engineering here also, if you have any questions for him, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Ms. Susan Berry. We appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a time for us to ask questions of staff or of our applicant.
I would could you go back to the slide with the potential range of cost?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So how was this determined?
This was determined because we're going to be receiving housing credits, so we're following the guidelines that HUD and the IRS put out for the area median income level in Wake County. And then it's backed up by a market study that the Housing Finance Agency ordered from a third-party market analyst.
It looks like
Yes, just 1 and 2 bedroom units, yes.
you had mentioned that it was looking at 4 stories, because that was something that was people were interested.
Well, in the town's plan, apparently, there was something about, and maybe Jeff or Aaron can speak better to that, something about that area, that corridor, wanting it to be 4 stories.
Right.
But that worked out perfectly for us, too, just because of the topo. We really needed to go 4 stories to get the 64 units in, and we'll have 2 elevators.
Would the sidewalk be going on the side of 70, or would it be going through kind of the middle of the property?
Well, right now, we can only commit to going on 70. We would love for it to go a more direct route to the Wake Med property, but there is a parcel in between our property and the Wake Med property, so we don't have access to that. Now, we are going to reach out to them to see if it's something they're interested in, but I don't know with their future plans if they're going to want to give us like an easement to do a direct route there, but we are going to reach out to them and see if that's something they'd be interested in doing. And then if not, we could try to do maybe some type of like trail, like little pathway, but we do have to think of ADA accessibility. So, you know, that's why we can really only commit to the sidewalk on the road for right now, but that is something we want to look into for sure.
And how does that commitment for a sidewalk fall into? Would that be something that's part of your plan would the town have some financial commitment to that? How does that work?
As of right now, no, that would just be in our budget.
Okay.
We are applying for money from the county through their pool of funds for affordable housing, so that could be helpful, but we have not, as of right now, we would be the ones paying for that.
You know how long of a sidewalk that would be?
Oh, I don't have that
Okay,
right off the bat. Brent may know.
that's fine.
I don't
I was
know the
just curious. Okay.
Okay.
Questions or comments?
I've got a comment first, and I wanted to congratulate Ms. Joseph on her first presentation before the commission. Did a great job. So congratulations. Ms. Tate, I want to thank you for coming up with this proposal. I think it fills a great need in the area. I think it's a much better project for this as opposed to a hotel. I like the proposed rate structure that you have. I think that also fills a need for our seniors. I know you don't have to submit a site plan, but I do have a question where you have these 64 units for seniors. Is there any thought on a pet park or dog park in the area? Is my first question. Second question is, and I see you've got an ADA walkway down to the dumpster pad area, and then it also goes to the west of the property. Is there any thought of connecting that west side down along the parking lot to make kind of a loop for people to walk around the project, or is it just going to be, right now the sidewalks go up 70 or it goes in front of the property? I was just wondering if they were going to make or if they're envisioning perhaps a loop that goes around the parking lot that seniors could walk around, since they can't really get out on the 70.
We do have the dog park, and we do have a sidewalk there that's hard to see probably, but that would be used for walking and, of course, on the, on the entrance road. But I believe there's a sidewalk that loops around. It's hard for me to see, but isn't there, Brent?
It's the red dash line.
The red dash line.
Oh, okay.
On the south side of the building.
I was thinking along the south of the parking lot, connect like with the dumpster area to the sidewalk up around there, just so they'd have a complete circular walking path. I just wonder if that had been considered at all.
Yeah, but the dumpster path does have to be, fully accessible. So that is taken into account for, so that everyone can get there easily and accessibly. But the sidewalk, I'm not sure. I just know that we have the one that does link up to the main road as of right now, but that's something we could certainly consider.
I was just asking, if, just to consider it. Right now, your walkways kind of go one way and dead end, and one way and dead end, and to the dumpster pad and dead end. And I just thought perhaps making a circular trail might be beneficial, where that's all going to be treed down that area. It might make a nice walking area. But like I said, I appreciate the plan and the layout. I think it's very well thought out, and
Thank you.
Ms. Phillips, Ms. Avent?
I too echo off of Mr. Carson with, I do appreciate the plan, and having been, having lived on New Rand Road, I did go to the meeting, and I remember you guys. So, and I much rather have a senior living facility there than a hotel.
Mhm.
Because you kind of like what you're getting into, as opposed to a hotel. So I do appreciate, you know, it to me is well thought out, and I appreciate the plan, and I appreciate your you considering this.
Thank you.
I also agree with the other commissioners. I think it's a well thought out plan, and thank you for including the site plan. I also saw your presentation a couple of weeks ago to town council.
Oh, okay.
So was here for that one too, but I also agree with Mr. Carson. It would, you know, provide a activity route for seniors to get exercise. If instead of the sidewalk going through the parking lot, if it went around the edge of the parking lot, be a little bit safer, you know, for them and allow them to get some exercise.
Yes. Okay. We will look into that.
Yep.
This is a question for Mr. Treesberg or Aaron. If there is there any connection to our greenway with the southern part of that site? I know there's a slope associated with that and some streams, but is there any connection to our greenway, Parks and Rec, that site needs to have access to, or?
No, there is no connection to our greenways. Like Ms. Dusenberry Tate stated, that they would likely try and speak with Wake Med and the adjacent property owner to maybe have a connection to further it out more to the future medical offices and beyond, but not anything connecting our actual trail to our trail system.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say the main corridor in the plan comes up Mahler's Creek, and it kind of wants to veer a little more to the east of the industrial park that's there along Management Way. There's a few. If you could come down the west side of the branch that comes up here along the edge of their property, it really, if it comes up through there, it wants to be on the other side of the creek. But there are some different opportunities that may allow for like a connection over to the east, but it's going to involve multiple other properties, including a couple in that industrial park. So we'll continue to monitor that as we move forward in the site planning process to see, you know, at least if there's any kind of easement that would make sense to put in place for now, that maybe we can, you know, the town can do a small project in the future if we can get everything in line. It looks like it should be fairly simple, but when you start looking at the topo of what's been built out there, there's some pretty high retaining walls on some of those industrial properties that go right up to the creek. So there's not a lot of room on one side, but then there could be on the other. So we'll definitely, Mr. Dellinger did bring that up during the council meeting. So we've taken note of that, and we'll definitely work towards trying to see what we can do to put in place for a future connection. But the corridor does generally want to go to the east, which at some point, if there's sidewalk along 70, it can join up there. But obviously, if we don't have to push people out to 70 and keep them on more of a more protected corridor, that would be optimal.
Natural as opposed to circulation route. Yeah, I think that. I mean, that would really enhance the connection east-west. Not that you have a whole lot of control over that, but if that is something that can happen, we would. Well, I can't say we, but I know I would like to see that. I think it would really help the use and the residents.
I agree.
I also agree, Mr. Carson and Ms. Avan, about incorporating some type of internal trail, walkway, rounding that site for your neighbors, for your residents, so that it doesn't necessarily just dead end at the dumpster at the end of the site. I know that it's probably placed, the dumpster's placed where it is, probably just meant for ease of access for the sanitary trucks to come in and back out, come out. But definitely would benefit finding a way to create amenities on the site besides just the building component for the residents. So that's something that definitely, I hope that you can find a way to do that in some way.
Okay.
It keeps them on site, but also if we can find a way to connect to a greenway connector or something else that could also enhance that trail.
Okay, we would definitely look at that.
The buffer on the northern side of the site, I know this is not a final site plan, but I see that it's planted, but is there any access on the north side of the building for anything that's exterior? Patios on the ground, on the site, or recreational spaces? Is it only, do you only provide outdoor spaces on the south? Is there anything on the north side that would engage the residents? And then also, is that buffer enough buffer from the existing?
Yeah, from the existing property, and they have a fence there, so it's not very attractive. So all of the amenities are on the other side, and then unfortunately we couldn't have another access point because of the topo and because of the buffer for the streamway. So that's one reason everything's where it is.
Adjacent sites do sit up quite a ways. Just in the back part of their property, it drops as much as 10 to 12 feet. So this will sit lower at the end of the day from those properties. So having some mature tree canopy up in there will probably be the focus of staff when we're reviewing it, to make sure that there is a little bit of a visual buffer between them.
And then, I think just the activation of the building site that, I wonder, would the residents really enjoy there's nothing on the other side to walk around, even if it's a trail, that it's a planted trail that loops around the building. I'm not sure how that might work, but that it's not just an unused buffer that's only planted, but.
That's a good idea. I'll have to talk to my engineer about that to see if that's possible, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
Just a way to incorporate perhaps the trail or internal trail system that is connected around the building site, but continue to create a buffer that makes it really a place that they want to be in. Not that it's the north side is usually the not the direct sunlight that we get on the south for patios, but not for it to be the dark side of the building with no activity. People hide in those spaces. And so to make that as open and viewable as possible, I worry a little bit about that when it's not active, people can sit. So especially to protect those residents and actually make it an active space. One last thing, can you go back to, maybe that's not it, your conditions, maybe that's.
Yes.
That you stated the types of recreation, social spaces. And I noticed that in the comments from some of the residents, they asked about businesses or services in the building that were, you said there won't be a retail component.
No retail component.
So Was there any thought about any type of commercial component that would perhaps benefit the residents more as to reduce the need to leave the site for certain things?
Well, this is going to be submitted for tax credits, so it doesn't have retail inside of it. But we, at some of our other communities, we do have things where local businesses will come and do, like, set up a beauty parlor, like in the bathroom downstairs, and do like the residents' hair, and we'll get like discounts at surrounding stores. Or we even talked about possibly getting like little pop-ups on site, where some of the local like boutiques or businesses can come on site and do a little pop-up for the residents. So that's the type of thing that we're going to look to do on site.
It may be wonderful if there were really kind of dedicated spaces somehow for that type of function. It could create a whole different type of, I don't know, building type for you in a way that it's not really a retail that's a physical, permanent space, but there really are spaces that the residents use, but then also vendors come in, like you said, pop-up spaces that happen throughout.
Yeah, and we definitely have a lot of spaces inside. We have a large community room for community activities, and then we have like another large room for crafts and games, and that could also be a room where people come in. We do like to bring in local human service agencies too, to come in and talk to the residents about, like, you know, predatory lending or things like that, workshops that the seniors could benefit from, or like fire prevention, or just, you know, the police to come in and talk about like safety, like how to defend yourself. So we always look to provide those linkages to the residents and have someone come on site like every quarter at least to do some type of workshop like that. But we definitely have spaces already in the building where we could have pop-ups. And there's a large area when you first walk into where there will be seating, and it's kind of like the foyer is really large, so even something could happen there.
Okay, I think does anyone have any other questions or comments?
I just have one more question. In the documentation, the information that was provided, it says that you would have 8 mobility units. Is that ADA compliance units? What are mobility units?
Yes, so we, under code, you have to have 5%. And then the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency also requires you to have 5% under their mobility requirements, which isn't exactly code, but they're pretty much code, because we still have like roll-in showers and all the grab bars and the pull cord,
Okay.
where like your light will come on outside if you have an issue. So that's why there are 8 mobility units, yes.
Okay. So you mentioned a pull cord for lights to come on for assistance. So is there going to be like somebody at a front desk or something, like 24 hours?
We don't have a monitoring system like that. It's really just more of the buddy system, like in the neighbors, and they do a good job of that. The residents do, of like looking after each other and noticing if someone hasn't been seen for a while.
Okay.
They get to be very, you know, close and very good at that at all of our communities.
I just wanted to thank you for pointing out in the conditions that elderly households, is everybody 45 years and older.
It's supposed to be 55 and older, which I used to think was really old, but
Start my retirement early.
Right?
Mr.
I did have one additional question. This may be for town more so, but how does this area, I mean, I'm thinking of a bus stop or other way, so I don't know, I can't recall if Wake Med, that facility, has a bus stop. I'm assuming there's not one just hanging out on 70 somewhere. So how that falls into the greater transit plan, when I think of 50, elderly or 55 plus, accessibility. And as Mr. Phillip pointed out, there's not there's not a lot of other amenities within that area, so you would have to leave, even unfortunately to get to the senior center that's only a mile away. Most, older people, especially wheelchair bound, are not going to be walking a 2-mile round trip to access those. So trying to see what other.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it is on the 70 as a transit corridor, and that there are planned transit stops on 70 that would be located in proximity to
Okay.
that site.
Yeah, that's part of our, when we applied for it, they called it the circulator service, although ours, what we studied is not really so much a circle as it is a shuttle back and forth between North-South Station, which is the end of Go Raleigh Route 7, I think it is, and then White Oak, which of course is kind of the terminus of our new Route 29. So we will be talking with council. We'll be giving them a little bit of a prep during this year's budget season, but really taking a look at the following budget season to try to see if we can work out something to get that service implemented. That was a study that we did a few years ago now. So we've got all the information we pretty well need, other than updating, some of the financial figures. And so we'll just have to see how that plays out with what monies are available from Wake Transit. Go Raleigh would be our planned operator for that service. But if we can get that up and running in the next couple of years, that would be ideal. And this would then be on that route and could take advantage of that service.
So would they be able to have a right of way for a bus shelter on that route at their edge of their property? Would they have to?
Yeah, so we would have to look at kind of the stop locations, but at the very least with the medical park next door, if there's not the opportunity for something up on 70, at least on the cul-de-sac that comes down into the Wake Med area. I think that median opening on 70 will stay there. So it would be able to be serviced, I think, from both directions, but we just need to look again at the kind of how the stops were planned. But we did have Wake Med, the existing Wake Med, as one of those locations. And then of course the senior center's on that route as well.
That would definitely be a good option for residents, especially considering that they would have to do a U-turn to go west anyway out of that property eventually, or at the light.
That's what I was going to add. So I couldn't remember, is that light currently a U-turn? Okay. So I figured it would have to be, but I couldn't remember.
Okay, anything else? So that we have, so before we move into our voting, do we have anyone else that would like to speak in favor or against this project? So in order for us to have a opportunity to decide and further discussion on this, do we have a motion from
I'll make a
anyone?
motion.
Okay,
I move that the Planning Commission accept the consistency statement drafted herein as our own written recommendation regarding the consistency of the request with the town's adopted land use plans, and recommend approval of case CZ-24-01 to the town council, particularly since the project could advance the public interest in the provision of housing options for low-income seniors in a suitable location.
Carson, do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So we are ready for a vote, but before that, do we have any other discussion or question before we vote on this motion? No staff or comments? Okay, well, I guess we are ready to make a decision.
There's a motion to recommend approval. I'll call the vote. Gina Avent,
Aye.
Ralph Carson,
Aye.
Philip Jefferson,
Aye.
Jehan Hodges,
Aye.
Sherry Phillips.
Aye.
A motion to approve and recommend.
Carries unanimous.
Okay, it carries unanimously, 5-0. Yes.
Thank you so much. We have approved our motion, and we thank you for your presentation and your time with us. Please do come back to us if we have anything we can help you with on this project. Thank you so much. So we move into our planning director's report. Do we have anything? Mr. Triesenberg.
Yes. So we do have the planning workshop on May 16th online from 1 o'clock to 4:30 p.m. Again, we're hoping that you can attend in person in the training room. If you absolutely cannot be here in person, but will be somewhere where you could chime in virtually, we can certainly try to make that accommodation. But given that our attorney staff will be present as well, we would like to have just kind of the benefit of everybody being able to be in the room together and talk amongst each other after the training. And Terry, I don't know, do you have something you wanted to say?
Harry Jones, Town Attorney. This will be a joint session with council, so town council members will also be present to the extent they're available. And the idea is if you have questions, this will be the School of Government putting out somewhat of a generic training. So if you have questions that come up about what our local rules or our local UDO says, that it'll be a good opportunity to get those answered while we're all in the same room. So I would encourage you, if you are available, to come in person.
If y'all can, you don't have to tell us right now, but if you can let Thomas know this week if you can attend, so we can get the registration correct, because we do have to register everybody together who will be attending.
I think I can be there. I'll be coming back from a travel with students, but I'll be back for that day, barring something with the airplane. But yeah.
It's a Thursday.
It's a Thursday.
16th.
Thursday the 16th.
Yep, 16th. Other than that, just some reports on council activity. Since you last met on March 19th, the Mahlers Creek subdivision, which was something that you probably looked at months ago. I probably couldn't even tell you exactly what date that was here before you. But that one did get a vote. That is a residential project off of Bryan Road. That was approved unanimously on a vote of 5-0. Then at the meeting of April 2nd, the project at 309 Holman Drive, that was the Tier 1 rezoning for Shalom Christian Community Church for the daycare. That was approved as well on a vote of 5-0. And then the East Garner Road Assemblage, otherwise known as the Park at Garner Station, which was the big project between Garner Rec Park and the future Jurgen Park. That project and the associated development agreement were approved by the council on a vote of 3-2. We do have, currently, we have our senior planner position advertised. This was the former transportation kind of focused position that we've retooled. This would be a position on Aaron's side of the house. So that is currently being advertised, and we hope to be able to be doing some interviews in the next couple of weeks. But I will be on vacation, just so you all are aware. I will be out Thursday of next week, and then the following week as well, be out in Washington State visiting with my family and my mom. But Aaron will be holding things down.
I did watch the council meeting previously, but so, for the East Garner Station, or whatever it will be named, what is the next step on that? There were some parks and rec that still need to be, is that right, reviewed? The parks, I have lost words.
Yes, I think I know what you're referring to. There is a request that the town will need to submit to the National Park Service because the roadway would connect on the northern edge of Garner Recreation Park. That needs to be approved by the Park Service, and there needs to be a swap of what they deem to be equitable land. So we're working with the developer to propose what that swap area will be. If that is not approved by the National Park Service, then they will basically be back to square one because a change of access point for road access becomes a major modification. And that basically has to start the process over. So that will be the next hurdle to see if that will be approved or not. And then locally, the next step would be for them to be working on their preliminary subdivision plan, which at this point, if it continues as envisioned, I'm sure that that will involve in the first phase more than 200 dwelling units, so it will have to come back to the council for a special use permit to approve that subdivision plan. We cannot just approve that at a staff level.
So if that's all. Are there anything from the commission?
Mr. Triesenberg, could you give us an update, if you have one, on MOB project at Timber and Highway 50 and on the Wake Med project off Timber?
As far as the Duke project at the corner of 50 and Timber, we are still waiting on them to decide how what their plans are. They kind of hit the pause button to, I think, do a little bit of reevaluation on what it was they were going to do on that site. I have not heard from them in quite some time. So not to say that we won't hear something next month, but at this time I don't have anything new to report other than that they're still pressing the pause button. And then for Wake Med, we are waiting on them for their official submittal. I've been in contact with the developer. I understand that they've been working with Wake Med on their various paperwork for real estate transactions and closings and things like that. So it is moving, but as of yet, we have not had anything official submitted to us either on that project.
Thank you.
Any update on our veterans hospital?
Mr. Boyland isn't here.
I know, so I'm asking it on his accord.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything new unless, are you aware of anything? Just as construction continues.
Construction does continue. I do see it. I make a purpose to drive that way every so often, just so that I have some feedback if Mr. Boylan brings that up on our next meeting, which he typically does, but it seems to be coming along.
Yeah.
Well, if there are no other information from the commission for staff and no other comments from staff, then we are adjourned.